Well, it's been like a real pleasure to be here in the conference. We have felt very warm welcome. And what I'm gonna show as a way of introduction for the project is some few objects that may be considered furniture, may be considered sculpture. You can change, the labels are interchangeable, but basically what I've been interested is always on how does an object triggers an activity and how does an activity results in an object. This one, for instance, is a game, is a kind of a seesaw where you have 9 persons that are on one side and another person on the other side. So you always have that relationship where strangers that enter this space have to organize themselves into playing this game, and that relationship is created, no? An asymmetric relationship where you have sometimes a powerful person that seems to control the others, but actually that person needs all the others in order to wield his or her influence. So that's, I've been thinking, how those objects create activities. This is, for instance, a love seat that is a Mobius strip that then led to another version that is a triple fold chair inspired in these kind of chairs that used to be in theaters like this. They were called gossip chairs because there's 2 persons that sit and then a third one comes and is overhearing. And then I continued, I'm showing examples of chairs I have designed because it's like kind of quintessential design object. This one is, for instance, a chair that you can modify. It's obviously a hand as well. And depending on how you articulate its parts, you leave a message for the next person that comes. They come in pairs, so it's like you have left and right. And I have always been interested in objects that somehow are for individual use, like the kind of like typical Mexican hat. And if sewing these hats together, how does this object that is meant to be used by one person becomes a social prop where you have to negotiate this quasi-architecture, no? Where do you move, how do you move, etc. And I'm just showing some few other objects, like, for instance, these nests that you enter, or this, which is a floating pyramid in the sea. I've done bicycle taxis for Mexico City. Or I want to show this because food has been a subject that has been mentioned during the conference. This is a food, like a mini business that is a food stand that sells insects. So far I've done this in Brazil and in Mexico. And in Brazil they eat ants, and in Mexico we eat crickets, and they're delicious. So we can be sure that in the future we'll be eating more insects. But in particular, I want to talk about some projects in greater detail. The first one I want to share with you is called the sanatorium. And in the sanatorium, what the sanatorium is like a clinic. This was presented first in New York and last year in Kassel during the Documenta exhibition, and will open now in July in London. And it's thought as a franchise a little bit. It's, the idea of a pop-up clinic that you go and you find in this place that in the reception there's someone dressed as a nurse, and they ask you, what is your problem? And it's not a problem about your body, like a hospital, although it looks like a hospital, but it's more about an ontological issue that you have, no? Maybe, the kind of recurrent problems are well, I don't know if I like my job, or I don't speak to my sister, or I don't know if I want to move to a different city. So whatever is your problem, this is, for instance, the version in New York, you have this environment that pretends to be an hospital, but what you really have is short, unexpected treatments that mix art and psychology. And after a short interview, what you are given is a schedule that says you have 2 or 3 appointments where you're going to participate in a session. Sometimes there are individual sessions and sometimes there are group sessions where you have a game that will help you see your situation under a new light. For instance, this one is called the Museum of Hypothetical Lifetimes. And what you do here is that you become a curator. You become and you have to design an exhibition about your life. You have that table that is the Museum of Life, and then you have shelves where there are a number of objects that are collected from flea markets, and it's a random but quite comprehensive list of objects. And then you have to position these objects in these spaces. But each of these spaces in the model have a specific meaning. And I was interested in this because models are something that architects use, also curators, that when they have to plan a big exhibition, they use models. Designers obviously use models. And why not use that and make it available to everyone? So I'll show you what's the design of this museum. Basically, it's an oversimplified plan of certain events that we all share. Here on the, I don't have a kind of a laser or something to point, but what you have is those circles and squares on the right represent your genealogy, your grandparents and your parents. Like 13 and 14 are your father and your mother. So the therapist tells you, okay, choose an object that represents your mother. And then you go and you pick one object and you place it there as if it were a sculpture. And then you fill all the other spaces. And then 12 is the cradle where you were born. And you put an object that represents your your early memories, etc. And then you have education. You have a labyrinth that represents, for instance, how do you find your way in like doing a number of odd jobs when you are out of school until you finally decide what do you want to do. And then you have all those curved lines that represent different moments in your love life. And you spend about half hour placing objects in this hypothetical museum. What I'm interested is in the way that children play. When children, arrange objects in the floor, they're trying to make a map of what the exterior world is. And it's very interesting to get hold of, to create interfaces that are not digital. I mean, we spend a lot of time in front of the screen and in front of a number of electronic devices. So I'm interested in having expanded interfaces where you have that relationship that is spatial, but that you can just like, you don't use nor technology nor language. Most therapies are very much language-based. But when you play with objects, which is something that designers, artists, architects do, that they take cardboard and paper, etc., you get like a physical sense of objects and you have a wide range of movement. So that's how you use this tool to go back to that early stage in childhood where you were arranging objects in a space. And you can choose to tell what these things means or not, but basically that's one of the therapies. I'm going to show you some other. This is called the vaccine against violence. And in our life we have a number of toxic interactions. So you have, like a certain anger. And what the therapist asks you here is to draw in this balloon the face of the person that has hurt you most, that you remember, no? And then you put that balloon on the top of a dummy, and you have to kick and punch until you break the balloon, and then they give you a placebo, a candy, really, that is the vaccine against violence. And then the idea is that killing or hitting that person in this symbolic space somehow replaces the need to go and punch that person in real life, no? The philosophical casino is an oracle where you ask a question and you throw a dice that there's different dices that have philosophical quotes. For instance, these are the Greeks, a selection of quotes. So you think of a question, and based on this question, you get a sentence, and then you talk to the therapist. Okay, how does this quotation brings light into your dilemma? One of the therapies also is called CityLeaks, and what you do here is to write a secret in a bottle of paper. In a paper you put in a bottle, and then in exchange you can read someone else's secret. It's an intimate moment, but with a total stranger. One more is Voodoo, that you have a little doll that you make good to. You think of someone you want to make good to, and you perform a kind of magical operation on the doll. The compatibility test for couples is it's a mix where you see, okay, you think, if I were a fruit, what would I be? And my partner, what fruit would they be? And then you mix the fruit, and you taste by the you compare by the flavor how compatible you are. So there's a number of other activities that I'm gonna skip just because I want to show other projects. This is a television project that is called Baby Marks. I realized that, for instance, a kid, 6 years old may tell you about 80 characters that are part of the Star Wars kind of mythology, no? So why not? I mean, that means that we can also learn, the basic facts of the history of philosophy and economic thought. So I wanted to do a project to kind of create like a economic and politics literacy. So there's a number of these, I tried to make these oversimplified versions. For instance, this is Adam Smith, who you may remember in the 20 pounds bill. So it's an exercise to simplify these historical characters that have shaped much of the world we live in, and then create situations where they have encounters. I'm just going to show you a very short clip. This is part of the design process where I try to find the kind of minimum silhouette.
Sir, why do you think that people are so ready to be afraid of the word socialism? Why is that?
Because of the fact that we're living in post-McCarthy's America.
This is
You'll be
during
aware of
Occupy
the
Wall
communist
Street.
and socialist witch hunt that was led by Mr. McCarthy in our past. And words like communism and socialism are very scary things in America.
But I have a suggestion for you, Carl.
Oh yeah, I'm all ears.
Perhaps you should think of a new name for your ideology.
Do you think that this movement has anything to do with me?
Not really.
Carl, I'm surprised that you didn't notice that this lady that you're interviewing, who seems very nice, is wearing a Prada bag. She has a Prada bag.
I saw.
Well, I'm just gonna skip because we have to rush, but Last project I want to show you, it started with these shovels that you see here. And it's because I was invited to do a project in a park in Mexico. That instead of doing, like a kind of sculpture in a park, etc., I said, let's do something with social impact. And we organized a campaign for voluntary donation of weapons that were crushed, and then they were melted, and they were made into shovels to plant trees. So we collected 1,527 shovels, and that was in 2008. And we planted those trees, and after that experience, I got a call from the government, and who had learned about this action in the city of Culiacan, and they told me, we're going to make a destruction of weapons that we have sized, and maybe you want them to make more shovels. So, but this time they were 6,700 weapons that you can see here, and this is like a kind of, there's all these weapons that enter Mexican territory from the United States because it's so easy to buy a weapon in the United States that they are all the time crossing the border, and the army has to constantly find way to destroy these weapons that are entering our territory. So what I did with this, instead of making shovels, was now to make instruments. And it's a bit difficult to make instruments because you have to work and think on a different way. It's not something that you can even draw. You just like take these things on a table and a little bit figure out what kind of combination can be created. This is a psaltery, for instance. This is a violin. And then it comes a part of extracting sounds from these pieces of metal. So this is a saxophone. This is a flute. And the project has evolved into a number of different instruments. Some have been made mechanized, so you have a MIDI controller that you can prepare a score in the computer and then send signals to these mechanical instruments. I'm just going to show you a little video. Maybe we can, yeah, we have sound. The boxes that you see there are ammunition boxes, and there are a number of, these are chargers for a AK-47. It's like a kind of, I don't even know how to compare with the kind of percussion instrument that does this kind. Oops. So, for instance, this is called the Kalishnikov. It's done of chargers of these machine guns, and this is, for instance, we call it cañonófono because it's made of cannons from rifles, etc. And very soon, what we started to find is that this what was done for killing now was producing music. So depending on the length of the cannon, you could have different notes. And what is interesting to see, is that weapons continue to be sold around the world, and we only see the violence where the weapons are being used. But we have to stop the weapons from the places that they are made. I think that we have to develop a rejection towards weapon industry because they're featured in television and in movies and in video games as something cool, as something sexy. And there's like a total disparity between how they're portrayed in culture and the real effect that they have in the world. And basically, this project, which is incorporating musicians into the process, is the beginning of something that it's like a kind of collective effort to try to transform this fascination with weapons into a cultural rejection of weapons. We have to, in these centuries, like stop the production of weapons altogether. It's a little bit an old pacifist dream, but I believe that it's one of the things that we'll have to face in this century to move this. And I'm gonna stop here because we're run out of time. Thank you.